My name is Emma Clark. I'm 31 years old. On the day I graduated from Dalhousie University, my father stood at the head of the dinner table, tapped his knife against his wine glass, and the whole room went quiet. 43 people. Family, neighbors, my parents' friends from the church group they'd been attending since I was in elementary school. I was sitting at the far end of the table in my dress, still wearing the lanyard with my graduate card on it because no one had told me I could take it off yet. I watched my father smile, clear his throat, and begin. "I want to take a moment to celebrate the Clark family tonight," he said. His voice carried the way it always did, full and certain. "Because while Emma is finishing her degree here, we've just heard some incredible news." He turned toward my brother, Daniel. "Your brother has been accepted into the MBA program at the Rotman School of Management at U of T. Full merit scholarship. September intake." The room erupted. My aunt from Truro pressed her hand over her mouth. My mother grabbed Daniel's arm. Someone said, "Oh my God, Daniel, that's incredible." Daniel, to his credit, looked uncomfortable. He looked at me from across the table, with an expression I couldn't quite name. He opened his mouth. He closed it again. My father raised his glass higher. He looked at me. He smiled the way you smile at someone you're about to forget. "And congratulations to Emma too, of course. 4 years. Communications. She worked hard." He turned back to the room before I could speak. "To the Clarks." 43 glasses went up. I lifted mine. I drank. I smiled. And I memorized every single face in that room. They think I vanished because I was shattered. They never understood that I left, because I finally saw the game clearly. I had spent 22 years playing by rules that were written to make sure I could never win. The night I graduated, I stopped playing. I just didn't tell anyone. 3 years later, my parents sent Daniel to find me. What he found made them understand they had made a catastrophic mistake. By then, there was nothing left to salvage. Let me start from before the graduation. Not from that dinner, but from the years that made it predictable. I was born in 1993, the second child, 2 years after Daniel. We grew up in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia, just across the bridge from Halifax. The kind of neighborhood where the houses all looked the same, and the winters lasted 6 months, and your parents' opinion of you was treated like a fact of nature. Daniel was sharp. Genuinely sharp. I was never arguing with that. But there is a difference between celebrating one child and dismissing the other, and my parents never seemed to notice they were doing both at the same time. When I was 9, I placed second in the provincial junior writing competition. A short story about a lighthouse keeper's daughter, who teaches herself to navigate by the stars. I came home with a certificate in a plastic sleeve and a small check for $50. My mother said, "That's sweet, honey," and put it on the counter. My father didn't look up from the hockey game. That same week, Daniel made the rep hockey team, and my father drove 2 hours to Moncton to watch the first practice. There was a photo on the fridge for years. Daniel in his gear, my father's hand on his shoulder, both of them grinning. My certificate disappeared. I'm not sure where. I never asked. In 2008, Daniel was nominated for a provincial science fair scholarship. He didn't win, but the nomination was enough. My parents put his photo in the church bulletin. When I got the lead in our school's spring musical that same year, my mother came to one performance, left at intermission, and told me later that she had a headache. I stood at the front of an empty gymnasium helping stack chairs afterward, and I thought, this is what invisible feels like. It escalated the older we got. When Daniel needed a car for university, my father bought him a used Civic from a dealership in Dartmouth. Clean, reliable, good tires. When I started university 2 years later, I was told I could take the bus. There was no bus that connected Dartmouth to Dalhousie at the hour I needed. I walked when I had to. I got a part-time job at a copy shop on Spring Garden Road, and used my paychecks for a monthly transit pass and textbooks. My parents contributed $11,000 to my degree over 4 years. I know because I kept the receipts. Daniel's undergraduate cost them $44,000, and that didn't include the meals they sent money for, the parking pass, the laptop they replaced twice when his broke. By the time I graduated, I had $67,000 in student debt and a 3.6 GPA that nobody had asked about. The night of the graduation dinner, I left at 9:15. No one noticed for a while. Daniel texted me at 9:42. I'm sorry about what Dad said. That wasn't okay. Call me when you can. I didn't respond. I walked back to my off-campus apartment on a side street near the university, packed 2 bags, and sat on the edge of my bed with my laptop open. I created a new email account, e.hayes.creative@gmail.com. Hayes was my grandmother's last name. She had died the winter before and left me $1,800 and a handwritten note that said, "You are more capable than they let you believe. Don't wait for permission." I kept the note in the back of my journal. I read it that night 3 times. I searched for hours. Content strategy, copywriting, UX writing, remote contract work, how to register as a sole proprietor in Nova Scotia, whether it was cheaper to work and save in Vancouver than in Halifax. I opened a spreadsheet and laid out what I had. $1,800 from my grandmother, $412 from my last pay at the copy shop, $67,000 in federal and provincial student loans, 2 months before my lease ended. I had nothing except the knowledge that staying would cost me more than leaving. On June 14th, I bought a one-way WestJet ticket to Vancouver, $438, 2 checked bags, everything I owned. My mother texted me when I was in the departures lounge at Halifax Stanfield. "Are you visiting someone?" I typed back, "Moving west." There was a long pause. Then, "Let us know when you're settled." They didn't ask for an address. They didn't call. Vancouver was the right choice. I knew it from the first morning I woke up in a basement suite in East Vancouver and listened to the rain against the window and felt nothing from my family pressing down on me. The suite was $680 a month. Small kitchen, 1 window that looked at a fence, a bathroom with a shower that took 4 minutes to warm up. It was mine. I had registered as a self-employed contractor before I left Halifax. I spent the first 3 weeks building a portfolio site, reaching out to small businesses who needed web copy and content, applying through every remote platform I could find. The first month, I made $900. Not enough, but close. I picked up a Saturday shift at a coffee shop on Commercial Drive, $7 over minimum wage. I ate a lot of rice and rotisserie chicken from the supermarket on the corner. By December of that year, I was making $3,200 a month through contracts. By the following spring, I had more work than I could take on alone. I started turning down contracts to protect my quality and my reputation. I raised my rates. The clients didn't leave. I started thinking about what it would mean to build something more permanent. Daniel called 21 times in those first 8 months. I answered twice. Both times I kept it short. "I'm doing well. Work is busy. I'll be in touch." I never was. He left a voicemail in October that I have kept to this day. It's me. I'm not calling for Mom and Dad. I want you to know that. I'm calling because I miss my sister, and I've been thinking about that graduation dinner, and I want you to know that I think he was wrong to say what he said. I just want to know you're okay. Please call me back. I listened to it 4 times. I didn't call back, but I saved it. I told myself I was protecting the work. That was partly true. The rest of the truth is that I was protecting myself from being visible to people who had only ever looked through me. March 4th of the following year. 8:47 at night. My phone rang. Unknown number, British Columbia area code. I answered. It was my father. Emma, thank God. His voice was the way I remembered it when things were serious. Low. Stripped of the performance. "I need you to listen. Daniel was in an accident on the Trans-Canada last night. Near Rivière-du-Loup. A transport truck lost control in the ice. His car was totaled. He's alive, but his back is very bad. 2 vertebrae. The surgeons at the hospital in Quebec City did what they could, but they're saying he needs intensive physiotherapy and rehabilitation. The public system wait time in Ontario is 4 months. There's a private rehab center in Toronto, Dr. Keen's Clinic, in North York. It's 2 weeks of intensive inpatient treatment, and they say the window for recovery is narrow. We need $18,000. We've already spoken to the bank. We're tapped out. Emma, your brother could walk again properly, or spend the rest of his life in pain. You've been saving. Please. I sat very still. $18,000. Dad, I want to talk to Daniel. He's sedated. The pain medication. A pause. Emma, you know how your brother feels about you. He would never ask. But I'm asking. As your father. I had $11,400 in a savings account. The rest of what I needed, I had in a separate account I'd been treating as an emergency fund. I had told almost no one it existed. Tell me the transfer details, I said. I wired $18,000 the following morning. It emptied every account I had except $417. My hands were shaking when I pressed confirm. I told myself it was for Daniel. I told myself family showed up when it mattered. 4 days later, I texted my father. How is Daniel doing? The message delivered. No reply. I called. Voicemail. I called my mother. Same. I tried Daniel's number directly. It rang once and disconnected. I tried again. Nothing. By the end of the week, I understood. They had blocked me across every number, every platform. I checked my email. My messages were showing as unread. They had taken $18,000, used my brother's name, and erased me. I sat on the floor of my basement suite for a long time that evening. Then I got up, opened my laptop, created a folder, and named it Documentation. I uploaded the wire transfer confirmation. I screenshotted every attempt to contact. I recorded the date, the time, every call attempt. I saved my father's original voicemail in a second location. I had no idea how long it would be before I needed any of it. I knew I would need it. April of that year, I changed my phone number. I did not give it to my family. The following month, I tried reaching Daniel through the Rotman School alumni directory. I found an email. I sent a short message. Are you okay? It bounced back undelivered. He had changed it. I stopped trying. I worked. What happened over the next 6 years would look from the outside like a straight line. It wasn't. There were months I ate badly, and slept badly, and woke up at 3 in the morning, thinking about the $18,000, not because of the money, but because of what it meant. That I had still believed, at 23, that loving them would change something. But the work was real, and the growth was real. And the numbers kept climbing in ways I hadn't dared to project. The first year, $38,000 in contract revenue. The second year, I registered a proper business, Hayes Creative Incorporated, using the name I'd been working under. Hayes for my grandmother. The same name, the same reason. I kept my face off the website. I used initials in my bio. Hayes, content strategist. The work spoke for itself, and slowly, my reputation began to travel faster than I did. The third year was when the pandemic hit, and everything digital accelerated. Every company that had been slow-walking their content strategy suddenly needed one immediately. I hired my first contractor, a writer in Winnipeg I'd been collaborating with informally, then a project manager in Ottawa, then a second writer. Revenue that year hit $104,000. I moved out of the basement suite and into a one-bedroom in Mount Pleasant, plants on the windowsill, a proper desk, a closet that didn't double as a recording studio. By 2023, Hayes Creative had 8 full-time employees and a client list that included 3 publicly traded Canadian companies. Revenue for the year was $1.4 million. I had a corporate lawyer, a bookkeeper, and an accountant. I had never shown my face at an industry event under my own name. I liked it that way. Hayes had a reputation. Emma Clark had no digital footprint worth mentioning. 2024 revenue, $2.1 million. By January of 2025, a private equity group out of Calgary had expressed interest in acquiring a controlling stake. My corporate lawyer, Patricia Sung, who I had worked with since 2021, fielded the initial approach. In May, a second buyer emerged. Meridian Content Group, a mid-sized digital media company headquartered in Toronto. They wanted 60%. Patricia and I met in her office in downtown Vancouver on a Tuesday morning in June. They're offering $7.2 million for 60%, she said. $4.3 million cash at close, the remainder in an earn-out over 18 months. You'd retain 40% equity, stay on as creative director for 3 years at $165,000 annually. She slid the term sheet across the desk. Emma, this changes your life. I looked at the number for a long time. I want to say yes, I said. Then, say it. I signed the term sheet on June 12th. The acquisition process required extensive due diligence, and Meridian's legal team retained an outside firm to review the corporate structure and financials. The firm they engaged was Crawford & Boyle LLP, a mid-sized commercial law firm with offices in Toronto and Ottawa. My brother had been an associate at Crawford & Boyle for 2 years. I did not know this yet. July 8th, 2025. A Tuesday. I was at my desk reviewing a content calendar for a client when my phone rang. Vancouver number I didn't recognize. Is this Emma Clark? A woman's voice. Professional. Speaking. This is Jessica from Crawford & Boyle in Toronto. We've been retained to conduct due diligence on behalf of Meridian Content Group in connection with their proposed acquisition of E. Hayes Creative Incorporated. I'm calling to schedule initial document review with the founder. Are you available for a call Thursday afternoon? Of course, I said. Thursday works. The call ended. I sat very still. I thought about the initials. E. Hayes, the registered address in Vancouver. My real name on the incorporation documents, which any competent law firm would access through the BC Corporate Registry within the first hour of due diligence. I called Patricia. The firm Meridian retained, I said. Crawford & Boyle. Do you know who's on the file? She checked. She came back on the line. A junior partner named Sandra Hall is leading. There are 3 associates listed. One of them is Daniel Clark. I heard the name the way you hear something fall in another room. Distant, and then immediately close. Okay, I said. Emma, should I request a different firm? There are grounds. No, I said. Let it proceed. I waited. July 11th, 2025. The Thursday call happened without incident. Sandra Hall led the discussion. Daniel was not on the line. I used my real name. My real voice. I answered their questions professionally. At no point did anyone mention anything unusual. That evening, at 8:53, my phone rang. Unknown Toronto number. I answered. Silence for a second. Then, Emma, my brother's voice. I hadn't heard it in 6 years. Daniel, it's me. Another pause. I pulled the incorporation documents today. E. Hayes Creative, Emma Hayes Clark. Registered 2019, Vancouver. His voice was careful, measured. I Googled it. I found the interviews. The industry profiles. E. Hayes, the anonymous content strategist. Emma. His voice cracked slightly. You built a $7 million company. I didn't say anything. Why didn't you tell me? I let the silence sit for a moment. The last time I trusted our family with money, I said, I wired $18,000 because I was told you were paralyzed in a ditch on the Trans-Canada. And then every one of you blocked me. A long silence. What did you just say? March 2019. Dad called me. Said you were in a serious accident. Said the private rehab center cost $18,000 and that the provincial wait times were too long. I sent it. 4 days later, every number I had for your family stopped working. I was blocked. Emma. His voice had gone very quiet. I was never in an accident. In March 2019, I was in London for a conference. I have the boarding pass stubs. I was not anywhere near the Trans-Canada. I know, I said. How long have you known they lied? Since 4 days after I sent the money. Another long pause. I tried to call you so many times. I changed my number in April of that year. I didn't give it to any of you. I sent one email to your Rotman address in May. It bounced. I graduated in April. I changed it when I left the program. He exhaled. Emma, I need you to tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the call. I told him about the wire transfer. I told him about the blocked numbers and the documentation folder I had been maintaining since the week it happened. I told him about 6 years of silence and building something real, while they apparently had no idea where I was or what I was doing. I talked for a long time. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, he said, I need to process this. But I want you to know something. I'm on your side. Whatever that looks like. I'm not calling for them. I never was. I remembered the voicemail he'd left 6 years ago. I'm not calling for Mom and Dad. I know, I said. I always knew that. He asked if he could come to Vancouver. I said yes. He flew out July 19th. We met at a cafe on Main Street, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and good espresso, and no background music loud enough to prevent a real conversation. He looked older, tired in a way that was specific, not general. He sat across from me, and we were quiet for a moment. The way you are with someone you've known your whole life and haven't spoken to in 6 years. He ordered a black coffee. I ordered the same. We didn't talk about anything small. I need to ask you something, he said. In March 2019, did you know it was possible they were lying to you? I suspected, I said. But he said your name. He said it was life or death. I sent it anyway. Daniel looked at the table. That's on them. That's entirely on them. I need my medical records, I said. I need to see your travel records from that week. Not because I don't believe you, but because if this ever goes further, I need documentation. He nodded. I already pulled my passport. The entry stamp into the UK is dated March 6th, 2019. Return stamp March 13th. Conference records, hotel receipt, everything. He slid his phone across the table and showed me photographs of the documents he'd already scanned. I figured you'd ask. I looked at the images carefully. Conference in London, March 8th through 10th. Hotel booking from March 6th to 13th. My father had called me the evening of March 4th, claiming Daniel was on the Trans-Canada somewhere east of Quebec City. The dates didn't just fail to align. They made the lie anatomically impossible. Thank you, I said. He looked out the window. Why didn't you just tell someone? Why 6 years of silence? I thought about how to answer that honestly. Because the only thing worse than being invisible to your family, I said, is being visible to them again and having them take something else. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a USB drive. I'm going to recuse myself from the Crawford file Monday morning, he said. Conflict of interest. Sandra will manage it. But I want you to know that I found everything, Emma. The mortgage registrations in Nova Scotia. The credit records. The gambling history. He paused. Dad's been in serious financial trouble for years. Sports betting, mostly. Online. The family house in Dartmouth has been refinanced twice. The second mortgage is underwater. They're behind on the property tax. Mom's credit card debt is around $30,000. There are collection agencies involved. He set the drive on the table between us. They're going to come for you when the acquisition closes. I need you to be prepared. I looked at the drive. I picked it up. I've been prepared since 2019, I said. He flew back to Toronto on the 21st. I called Patricia that evening and told her everything. She listened without speaking until I was done. Then she said, "Send me the documentation folder tonight. All of it." August came, and the due diligence continued without incident. Daniel formally recused himself on the 22nd of July, citing a conflict, and Sandra Hall managed the remainder of the file. On August 14th, Meridian confirmed they were proceeding to final terms. On August 17th, my mother left me a voicemail on my business line. I don't know how she found it. The message was short and without warmth. Emma, we know about your company. We know what it's worth. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. Your father needs help, and you have the means to provide it. I expect you to do the right thing. Call me within the week. That same evening, my father sent an email to the general inquiry address on my business website. It was addressed to E. Hayes. He didn't know yet that E. Hayes and Emma Clark were the same person. He wrote that he was the father of a former employee, and that he had information about the founder that he believed Meridian Content Group would find professionally damaging. He wrote that he was willing to discuss the matter quietly if certain financial arrangements could be made. He was attempting to extort a company whose founder he didn't know was his own daughter. I forwarded both communications to Patricia within 20 minutes of receiving them. She called me the next morning. "The voicemail is borderline but arguable," she said. "The email is extortion." He sent a written threat to a business address, tied to financial demands, referencing false, damaging information. That's criminal in British Columbia, under Section 346 of the Criminal Code. Combined with the 2019 wire fraud, you have a very strong position. She paused. "What do you want to do?" "I want them to stop," I said. "I don't want to destroy anyone. I just want to be left alone." Then, we send a letter that makes very clear what the alternative looks like. On August 25th, Patricia sent a registered letter and a secure email. 41 pages. The first section outlined the fraudulent emergency call of March 2019, the wire transfer receipt, the blocked contacts, the documentation. The second section covered the 7 years of estrangement initiated by their own actions. The third contained Daniel's travel records from the week of the claimed accident, proving the emergency was fabricated. The fourth section addressed the August 17th voicemail and the email to the business address, framing both under the criminal code. The fifth section contained my medical and financial history, demonstrating that I had received no support from my parents since 2017 and owed them nothing under any Canadian legal framework. The final section was the cease and desist. Any further contact with me, my employees, my legal counsel, or Meridian Content Group would result in immediate referral to the RCMP and the BC Prosecution Service, as well as civil action for damages. They had 72 hours to confirm in writing that they would cease all contact. 3 days of silence. Then my father called. Not my business line, my personal number, which he found through Daniel. I don't know how he got Daniel to give it up. Daniel told me later he hadn't given it willingly. September 2nd. 6:11 in the evening. I looked at the screen for a long moment. Then I picked up. "Emma." His voice was nothing like the last time. No authority, no performance. Just an old man frightened of a document he'd read 41 pages of and didn't have an answer for. "I just want to talk. Not about money. Just to talk." "Then talk," I said. "We made mistakes." A long pause. "I'm not a bad person, Emma. You called me in March of 2019, I said. And you told me Daniel was in a hospital in Quebec City with 2 fractured vertebrae. You told me it was life or death. You took $18,000 from me, and then you blocked my number before I could ask if he was recovering. Daniel was in London at the time." Silence. "We needed the money. We were desperate. We didn't think." "You didn't think what?" "That I'd document it? That I'd still have the transfer receipt 6 years later? That Daniel would eventually end up reviewing my acquisition file and call me?" Another silence. Then, very quietly, "Can we meet?" I looked out the window at the Vancouver rain. I thought about what it would mean to be in the same room as them. I thought about what it would mean to say the things I had never said out loud in a controlled environment with my brother present. "Fine," I said. "Saturday, 10 in the morning. There's a Tim Hortons on Barrington Street in Dartmouth. I'll fly to Halifax. Daniel will be there. I will be recording. If you're 30 seconds late, I leave." He said okay. Daniel flew into Halifax the night before. We met for dinner at a seafood place on the waterfront and talked about what to say and what not to say and how to stay steady. He was nervous. I wasn't, exactly. I was something else. Settled, maybe. Like a decision that had already been made. Saturday morning, 10:03. I was already sitting in the corner table with my coffee and my phone face up on the table, recording visible, when they walked in. My father had aged in ways I hadn't been able to picture from a distance. My mother looked smaller. They saw Daniel first, then me. My mother pressed her lips together. My father looked at the phone. They sat down. Daniel. My father's voice was tight, controlled. You told her. She already knew, Daniel said. She's known since 2019. She documented everything from the week you took the money. My mother looked at me. We're your parents, Emma. I know who you are, I said. My voice was steady. I'd practiced this, not the words, but the evenness. In March 2019, you called me and told me Daniel had been in a serious accident. You said he needed $18,000 for a private rehabilitation facility because provincial wait times were too long. I sent it. 4 days later, you blocked me on every platform. Daniel was in London at the time of the supposed accident. I have his passport stamps. I have the conference records. I have my wire transfer confirmation and every contact attempt I made during the week you blocked me. I set a printed summary on the table. You committed wire fraud. The voicemail you left on my business line in August and the email to my business address are documented as extortion under Section 346 of the Criminal Code. My lawyer has copies of everything and has already communicated the legal exposure to you in writing. My father picked up the printed pages. His hands were shaking slightly. We needed the money, he said, not looking up. We were going to pay it back. You had my number blocked before I could ask if Daniel had survived. My mother looked at Daniel. You're choosing her. I'm choosing the truth, he said, which you don't have a reasonable argument against. My father set the pages down. His voice dropped to something almost unrecognizable. Emma, we're your family. Surely we can. Read the letter, I said. You have the terms in writing. Cease all contact. Withdraw all claims. Confirm in writing. If I don't have that confirmation by Monday morning, Patricia files referral to the RCMP on Monday afternoon. I stood up. Daniel stood up beside me. I'm not asking you to understand what you did. I'm just asking you to stop. I picked up my phone. I ended the recording. We walked to the door. Neither of them followed us. Daniel and I drove out along the Dartmouth waterfront and walked for a while without saying much. The harbor was gray and flat, and there were a few container ships moving slowly in the distance. He bought 2 coffees from a drive-thru and handed me mine through the window, and we stood there watching the water. How do you feel? He asked. Like I put something down that I'd been carrying for a long time, I said. He nodded. He didn't say anything for a bit. I'm sorry I wasn't there earlier. You tried to call, I said. I was the one who changed my number. I should have tried harder. You're here now. He handed me his coffee to hold while he fished his keys out of his jacket. His hands were unsteady. I keep thinking about you at 23, he said. Sitting in some basement suite in Vancouver, wiring every dollar you had, because some version of us was worth saving. He shook his head. I'm sorry, Em. I didn't have an answer for that. I just gave him his coffee back, and we stood there until we got cold, and then we drove to the airport. September 8th. Patricia forwarded me a letter from a Halifax family lawyer, retained by my parents. It was 2 paragraphs. They agreed to cease all contact. They withdrew any previous claims or statements made to third parties. They confirmed they would not attempt to contact me, my legal counsel, my employees, or any professional associates. The letter requested no further escalation. Patricia's note at the bottom. Agreed to terms. File closed. Congratulations. I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and I sat in my apartment in Mount Pleasant with the rain outside, and I cried for the first time in years. Not a sad cry. A release. The kind that comes when something that has been held tightly for a very long time finally lets go. October 2nd, 2025. The Meridian acquisition closed. $4.3 million arrived in my business account at RBC. I stared at the balance for a long time. Then I called Patricia and said thank you. Then I called Daniel and said it's done. He said, I know. I'm looking at my calendar, and I've blocked out next weekend for Vancouver if you'll have me. I said yes. He flew out October 10th. We had dinner at a restaurant in Gastown, the kind of place that has good wine and no television. We talked for 4 hours. About Halifax, about our grandmother, about what it was like to grow up in the same house and have entirely different childhoods. He told me things I hadn't known. That our father had started gambling seriously when Daniel was in his second year of the MBA. That our mother had known and said nothing for years. That the house had been mortgaged a second time without anyone being told. That Daniel had spent years being held up as proof of something he never asked to prove. The worst part, he said, is that I didn't know I was the excuse for your disappearance until you told me on the phone in July. I thought you'd just chosen to go. He looked at his wine glass. I thought you were done with all of us. I was done with 2 of you, I said. Not you. He laughed a little, which was the right response. Before he left Sunday morning, I handed him an envelope. He opened it at my kitchen table while I made coffee. Inside was a check for $18,000. Emma, no. That money was stolen in your name, I said. It doesn't feel right for me to keep the narrative without giving you something to do with it. It's not about the amount. It's about closing the chapter on the right note. I handed him his coffee. Give it to someone who needs it. A student, a shelter, whoever. Just make it mean something other than what they intended. He held the check for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his wallet. I'm proud of you, he said. I need you to know that. I didn't know what to say to that. It is a strange thing, to hear a sentence you have waited most of your life to hear, and to receive it too late for it to change anything, and too genuinely to dismiss it. Thank you, I said. That was enough. December arrived the way Vancouver Decembers do, gray and wet and quiet. I settled into a rhythm that felt, for the first time in my adult life, like mine. Work in the mornings. Walks in the afternoons when the rain let up. The occasional call with Daniel, who had started making them regular, every Sunday around noon, not because anything had happened, but because we were trying to be siblings in the ways we hadn't been allowed to be before. No calls from my parents. No emails. No messages through mutual relatives, of which there were few who would have passed them along anyway. The silence was total. I thought sometimes about whether it would last. I thought about my father's voice on that call in 2019, and my mother's tight face in the Tim Hortons, and I concluded that they were people who had decided long ago that love was a transaction, and now that the terms no longer favored them, they had simply moved on to look for other arrangements. I could not fix that. I did not try. One Sunday morning in December, I woke up early and made coffee and sat at my desk while it was still dark outside, and I thought about what my father had said at my graduation dinner. All those years ago, in the private room at the restaurant in Halifax, 43 people listening, his glass raised. Maybe one day you'll find something you're actually good at. I thought about what I had found. I was good at starting from nothing. I was good at building things quietly, without applause, without anyone watching. I was good at keeping records, and staying patient, and understanding that time spent building is never time wasted, even when you are the only one who knows it. I was good at surviving the kind of love that takes more than it gives, and learning, slowly and painfully, and in my own time, how to recognize the difference. They wanted me to disappear. I did. Just not in the direction they expected. I poured my second coffee. Outside the window, Vancouver was beginning to lighten at the edges, gray becoming pale, gray becoming the particular silver-white of a Pacific morning in December. I had a meeting at 9. I had a sister-in-law's birthday to buy something for. I had a call with Daniel at noon. I had built something real. I had protected it with both hands, and I had done it without anyone's help, without anyone's permission, and without anyone watching. My father told me to find something I was good at. Turns out I was good at becoming exactly who I needed to be, in exactly the place I chose, on exactly my own terms. That was the only revenge I ever needed. And I didn't have to do a thing to get it. I just had to refuse to disappear the way they expected.